there, MegaMogwai here, and I got another Legends of Runeterra video for you guys today. And today we're going to talk about some new cards. I didn't think I would be doing this in a video today because I had originally planned to wait until the champion reveals and then go back and look at the prior day reveals and mash them all together in one big review. But I said fuck that shit after I saw Fabled Poro and a new Yeti that could actually enable the archetype. And by could, I legitimately believe it will 100% do that. So I have a lot to talk about because we got 11 new card reveals today. And like I said, we got a Poro and a Yeti, so I just cannot wait. So without further ado, I am recording. Yes, okay, let's talk about all these new cards because there's some juice, man. And I'm really excited for a lot of these. And the first one we're going to talk about is a card that I'm really hyped for, and that is Field Promotion. Field Promotion is a 2-mana burst speed Demacia spell that says the next time you play a unit this round, you grant it Scout. It's now an elite. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that the elite effect, I feel, will be a little bit... it really won't amount to much because I do feel like elites are a long way from being competitively viable, and even as a fun deck, it is also quite limited in its play patterns, right? Because elites are fundamentally well-statted units that you play on curve, right? So it's kind of like a very basic mid-range Demacia deck in which you play units and you play strike spells and you try to synergize the elites together, and that can make it worse than a regular Demacia mid-range because it is more dependent on set synergies to work out. So ultimately, the fact that it converts into an elite may have some implications here and there, but there may be some synergies that could amount, but ultimately I don't think it'll be super relevant. The relevant aspect of this card is that it grants, not gives, grants, permanently gives, English, a unit Scout. Scout, if you were to like tier or put the keywords on like a tier list, Scout would be very high up there, especially when it's combined with other keywords, because Scout effectively allows that unit to attack twice per turn. And within Demacia itself, there's a really good synergy with this because there's a lot of challengers, and a challenger with Scout is a very nasty combination. I've already noticed this when combining the Great Horn Companion with the banner card that the 1-drop gives you if you have an elite. I believe she says if you behold an elite, so that card could synergize with this in a way. But yeah, unless I could be wrong about that. I have to look back into the card. In fact, I have the game here. I have it open, so I can take a look real quick and actually confirm that. If you behold an elite, yeah. So the Penitent Squire, you guys are not seeing what I'm seeing here because I don't have that enabled, but I can enable it real quick for you. Yeah, the Penitent Squire says when I'm summoned, if you behold an elite, create a tattered banner in hand. So this means that the other card can enable you to run a few elites, and if you run that card as well, you can justify the Penitent Squire, and that could be pretty neat. So, you know, the elite may actually, the fact that it converts into an elite may have more of an implication than I originally thought. But regardless, let's take a look back at the card itself. So ultimately, within Demacia, there's a lot of very good synergies, but the exciting thing is when you go beyond that and you look into other regions in which this card can be combined with, right? The first one that comes to mind is Ionia, because competitively speaking, this card could be a big deal with Ionia because you can use it on an elusive unit and grant it Scout, allowing the elusive unit to attack twice, and that's a very nasty keyword combination. Within that same region, you have Zed, which you can give Scout. And Zed with Scout is terrifying, right? The problem with that combo is that you're spending a total of 5 mana. And the thing about this card is you can't like just give Zed, like you can't just give Zed the Scout, you know, after you play Zed. The thing is you have to commit 5 mana because you have to play this before you play the unit. And that's where the big downside of this card is. That's where I think, I'm not sure if this card will be ultimately super competitive because of that limitation. Also, it is a 2-mana spell in Demacia, which means it competes with spells like Single Combat and Sharp Sight. So there's a point in which you're stacking too many 2-mana spells, and you got to take that into account as well, right? It can make you go down not only in card advantage, but in tempo too, because if you play this onto a Zed, as amazing as that sounds, you're spending 5 mana, and if you're facing a reactive deck that can just easily kill off Zed with 1 card, then you went down 1 card in card advantage, and you went down in mana momentum as well, which is really relevant, right? So you can definitely crash really hard with field promotion, but ultimately the potential is really strong. Again, with Zed, you can even combine, like, go all in Demacia with a splash of Piltover for Vi, because giving Vi Scout is insane, because you have Challenger, you have the tough keyword, which allows you to get multiple trades off and survive easier, and you can get a level up with her and attack with her leveled up in the same turn as well. Remove 2 key pieces from the opponent's board and push in a lot of damage. So there's a lot of potential combos with this card, and that's what I like about it, because I like cards that give you more flexibility and really require you to be creative when deck building, because lately we've been getting a lot of archetypes and cards that kind of like build themselves, you know, like the Lurk mechanic or Blade Dance, which was very clearly designed to work with Azir. It feels like some aspects of the design of Legends of Runeterra lately is like pre-made, right, by the design team themselves. So like I said, it promotes less creativity when it comes to deck building. But then there's cards like this that can just be mixed in so many different ways. You may think, oh, this is for elite decks, but no, that's an illusion. This card can go in so many different region combinations, and I'm super excited to mess around with it. But it is important to note that it does come with a risk. Like, if you give Scout to a very weak and frail unit, you can very easily pay the consequences. So you have to be careful with that and take it into account as well, and take the matchup into account too, because you're facing more of a proactive deck that doesn't interact much with you, then this card can be bonkers, and I am super excited to mess around with it. I've been talking about this card for 7 minutes, but it has a lot of implications, and I really wanted to like spend my time talking about it. So let's move on to Fabled Poro. Fabled Poro is an epic Poro with an insane mustache that surpasses even the mighty Poro. It is a 4-mana 2/5 that says, when I'm summoned, grant all ally Poros a random keyword. Important to note that this includes the Fabled Poro himself, as he is, when you say all allies, it's including the unit that's generating the effect too. So he will have a random keyword as well. And this makes me super excited to try out Poros again, man. Like, this is going to be super fun. I don't know if it'll make Poros hyper competitive, but I'm already dreaming about a spread out Poro board with a bunch of Poro snacks going off as I feed my little guys, and they all have an extra random keyword incorporated onto them, which is, it sounds incredibly fun, really amazing, and the art is also spectacular. Will 100% be the thumbnail of this video. I think you can, understand that, and I'm just super hyped for Fabled Poro, and I will be messing around with the card for sure. We got the Abominable Guardian. Now this is really high up there with like one of the cards that I'm most excited about this set, because I believe that this card single-handedly enables the viability of Yetis as an archetype. It is an 8-mana 5/5 that says, round start, if you have 2 or more Yetis, summon me from hand and create a copy of me in your deck. And then if you play him, you draw a Yeti. So not only, like, he's generating more copies of him in the deck, which means that Babbling Burke you make it so that Babbling Burke doesn't run out of gas, right? And just keeps drawing you Yetis. And what I love about this card is that it gives Yetis, like, it gives you a really strong reason to play cards like Tall Tales, the 3-mana slow speed spell. And if you set things up right, you can, in the turn in which you don't have the attack token, at the end of the turn, you can make it so you have 2 Yetis on board, and then when it's your round, at the very beginning, Omaiwo Mushindaru Yeti here just auto-spawns from your hand without giving any sort of, like, warning to the opponent, and you have an extra 5/5 attacker. If you have multiple of these guys in hand, you can spawn them immediately. Like, this also makes it so that you can combine this card with, like, cards that create, like, imagine Zephyr Sage creating a copy of this guy in your hand, or even the card that we saw yesterday, the 3-mana, what was it? There was a card that basically puts a card at the top of your deck. No, it was a 2-mana one. The one from The lurk spell, it puts a copy of Abominable Guardian at the top of your deck, and it creates a copy of it in your hand. So then you can draw it, and then both of them are played, even though I don't know if that makes much sense, but I just love the idea of creating multiple copies of this guy and just having them all spawn at the same time and attack the opponent and just blow them back, right? There's a lot of fun potential to this card, but there's a lot of competitive viability that can come alongside with it as well. I believe this card actually will make Yetis a thing. Yetis have always lacked support. They have really good cards. They have one of the best 3-drops in the game in Avaros and Trapper. And they have the Ancient Yeti as well, which has been proven to be really good too. So with this card onto the mix and playing stuff like Tall Tales, you can legitimately justify going all in with Yetis, and I feel like it can be legitimately competitive. And I'm not sure how many times I'm saying legitimately in this video, but I'm just really, really hyped for this card. I think it goes a long way, and it's no joke. It is really good. And the play effect is all right because, you know, if you top deck this in a very dragged out game in which both you and your opponent have ran out of gas, you can play this and draw potentially another copy of it, or just another Yeti. But ultimately, what matters is the summon effect. It's super exciting, and I cannot wait to build a Yeti deck. That will be one of the first things that I do. Build a Yeti deck, because it is actually going to be a thing, and I'm super hyped for that. We got Defiant Dance. I'm going to spend like 2 seconds talking about this card because it's a Blade Dance card, and I really don't... I don't want to spend too much time on it, because I do have a little bit of PTSD from the archetype, but I do want to clarify a few things. First of all, if you read here, it says recall a unit. I've seen a lot of people getting confused by this, thinking that it's limited to just recalling your own units. But no, it is basically a Will of Ionia and the Homecoming, right? The problem is that it is slow speed. So comparing it to Will of Ionia, it is 4 mana, so it's 1 mana less, but then it's slow speed and it Blade Dances you 1. And this may seem like it makes the card worth it, but it does not. Believe me when I say, you will never replace this over Homecoming. Is that properly worded? Hopefully. Basically, you will never take out Homecoming for this. And I can't think of any other card in Azure Irelia that you will take out for Defiant Dance. Yes, being able to recall a card or a unit from the opponent is a really strong effect, but generally you want to be able to access this sort of effect at fast speed. And Homecoming also has a lot of synergy by recalling your own units and enabling you to trigger a Blade Dance again, or draw a card, etc., etc. This card is very limited. It being slow speed absolutely kills it. If it was limited to recalling your own units, it wouldn't make sense to begin with. But even the fact that it can be offensive, it's super limited. It's so much weaker than cards like Will of Ionia, and definitely much weaker than than Homecoming. So do not play this card in Azure Irelia. It will not be worth it, and I'm very, very certain that this card is just very bad. I want to clarify that. So let's move on to round 2, because we got 11 cards to talk about, man. So Starlit Epiphany is a 3-mana invoke spell that says if you have a Celestial ally, replace your deck with 20 copies of Behold the Infinite. I've seen people say, well, this is a counter to the Watcher. Fuck yeah, the ultimate counter. It's just like, that doesn't make much sense, because yes, you can refill your deck after the Watcher eliminates it. Then what? Are you gonna, okay, well, you can invoke and create an Equinox or a Supernova or a Fallen Comet, though you have to get lucky to get one of those because, in case you don't know, Behold the Infinite is not super cool start chart. It is basically an invoke that goes through all these Celestial cards. So you need to find an answer for the Watcher, and even if you do, they can just Fading Memories it and just create another copy. What do you do then, So ultimately, it's not a Watcher counter, believe it or not. We'll see how the Watcher is after the patch. Hopefully it won't be the same. We can all pray for that. Regardless, this card is just a meme card, honestly. It seems really funny. I can't see a world in which you play more than 1 copy of this, and I also believe this is limited to a deck with Allegiance and the Mountain Scryer to allow you to capitalize from all the back-to-back invokes. Regardless, I will mess around with it eventually. It's not a card that I'm super excited about because I don't think it's even that exciting as a meme card as some people make it out to be. But it is interesting. It's definitely a very unique card, and I will explore it in the future. We got Heaven's Align, which is a 1-mana focus spell that says Daybreak, create a random Nightfall card in hand, and Nightfall, create a random Daybreak card in hand. Not a very exciting card. I don't think you really play this in a Daybreak deck ever. Though in a Nightfall deck, maybe, but I do feel like you have better cheap enablers for Nightfall. Even though you're generating a Nightfall card in hand, because it's random, you can't really control what it is. Even though maybe the fact that you're generating something, honestly, like I could see this being played in Nightfall just because of the value, right? And the fact that it's a very reliable enabler, but it'll have to compete with other cheap Nightfall enablers like Fading Memories, for example. Though I don't know how relevant that card is at this point within the archetype. So I could see this being played in Nightfall. I'm not an expert on the archetype, so I would have to experiment with it. But it can have some strong pulls, though it can have some bad ones as well. Ultimately, it's very basic though. It's just that. It's a 1 mana, create a card and enable Nightfall. And like I said, in Daybreak it doesn't really make much sense and there's not really much more to the card. So let's move on to a card that I really do want to talk about for a bit, and that is motherfucking Atkan, Bringer of Ruin. 10 mana. Big boy finisher. We don't have that many big boy finishers in Legends of Runeterra, and Noxus is getting one that's even bigger than Captain Farron. This is a beast of a finisher if it comes down on the board. The problem is the speed of the card, naturally, right? It shares the same value or the same price that Cythria, Lady of the Clouds, does, right? And it's a similar finisher in that regard. But while Cythria spreads out and kind of like both of them give you a payoff for having a developed board state, but Cythria gives you less finishing potential in a way and spreads out the value throughout all the units, while Atkan is more, he's more of a greedy. He's more of a greedy folk, as he just takes it all for himself. Increase my power by the total power of all allies. Minimum, his power will be 10 because he includes himself. So that means minimum he'll be at 10, 10, 12 with Overwhelm. But if you play this guy with Spectra Matron, for example, you got a 16-12 at the very least attacking. So this card is meant to end games. Now, Spectra Matron is, I believe, the strongest way to play this card. You don't want to play this card in a regular mid-range deck like Ezreal Draven, for example, because you'd rather play Captain Farron. It comes in 2 turns earlier and is more reliable as a finisher for decks that curve out normally. But for a deck with Spectra Matron, the thing is, we don't know how Spectra Matron is going to be after the patch, because they could either nerf the Watcher or Spectra Matron, or potentially even both with this patch. So that could, it depends if Matron is nerfed or if she's redesigned. That combination will make more or less sense after the patch hits. Regardless, we're going to assume that Spectra Matron stays the way it is. In that case, that would be the premier way to play Atkan, though there are other options. You can play Freljord with access to ramp cards, and you can play Target Speak, Aurelion Soul, and Atkan. That name a more deadly duo to finish off games, right? Like you get, how much? You get 10 from, you have 20 overwhelm with Aurelion Soul alone. I want to try this with Target Speak because it's so ridiculous that I can't wait. You can legitimately finish games out of nowhere by high rolling the shit out of it, which sounds super degenerate, and I will definitely try it. Ultimately, it's limited to that. You have to find a way to cheat him out by either getting to turn 10 quicker or even having a reactive deck. I don't know if this makes sense in like a control deck, but maybe there is some control variant with Ionia that can be very reactive and counter stuff. I mean, I don't know why I say Ionia. Maybe Shadow Owls makes more sense. Ultimately, Shadow Owls and Spectra Matron is what really comes to mind, and I believe that'll be the best or the most competitive shell for Atkan. I'm excited to mess around with it because, like I said, we don't have that many big boy finishers, and yeah, he's pretty basic in what he does, but the power can just be off the charts, and it seems fun to play with him for sure. We got Thorn Blade, which is a 4 mana burst speed spell that says give an ally +5 power this round. I believe this card is strictly worse than most combat tricks, including Noxus specifically as a region. I think if you combine this card with Elixir of Wrath, it just kind of like sheds light on how overpriced it is. Because with Elixir of Wrath, you're getting +3 power for 1 mana, right? So I don't see a world in which you play this in any deck, really, because I would rather be playing something like Might, which gives +3 power and Overwhelm. And in an Overwhelm deck, I would rather be playing stuff like Decisive Maneuver, since we're reaching, that sort of like 4 to 5 mana value. I could be wrong, but I feel like this card is very expensive for what it does, and comparing it to something like Shapestone or, like I said, Elixir of Wrath within the same region, just really showcases how expensive it is. So That's how I feel, but I could be wrong. I could be undervaluing the fact that +5 power is a pretty crazy boost, but for 4 mana, it just feels really like a very heavy investment. Though, like I said, I could ultimately be wrong about it, but I don't feel like I am. And last but not least, we got 2 Shadow Isles cards. We got Astral Fox and the Twisted Tree Line. Astral Fox is a 4 mana 3/3 with Fearsome that has a play effect that generates a skill known as Symmetry in Stars, which says kill an ally to deal 3 to the enemy nexus. Now, initially you could say, well, this could be a replacement for something like Spirit Leech in Thresh Nasus. I don't believe that will be the case, because the fact that this generates a skill is a very big deal. You cannot undermine that. That means that when you play this, your opponent can interact with it. So if you play this and you target something very weak like a Prey, which is the kind of stuff that you want to be killing this with, your opponent, if they have access to any sort of ping like Mystic Shot, Make It Rain, Vile Feast, depending on the regions they're playing, they can very easily disrupt that, right? And that goes a long way, right? That's a big difference with stuff like Chronicler of Ruin, Spirit Leech, which upon entry immediately destroy the ally without giving any chance for disruption for the opponent. And that matters a whole lot. But on top of all this guy has Fearsome and a better stat line overall than Spirit Leech. Like, it's a much better attacker than something like Spirit Leech. But I do feel that because it gives the opponent the ability to interact, it will not replace a unit that will allow you to draw 2 cards off of a unit and trigger Slay anyways, right? Because Spirit Leech kind of like guarantees the Slay proc, while this doesn't. Outside of that, I do feel like this card will see play, because if you have this in an aggressive Shadow Owls based deck, you combine this with stuff like the Doom Beast and Stalking Shadows, and all of a sudden you have a lot of burn potential, right? The thing is, the deck needs to provide you with good sack outlets, but you can easily enable that, running stuff like Curse Keeper and potentially combining this. Like, you could play this in an aggressive version. We've seen aggro versions of Shadow Owl Shurima that aren't Thresh Nasus before, and this could be a late game sort of card in like very fast-paced burn decks, right? So I could definitely see this card being relevant there, and you can't really undermine, even though the stat line is below average, the Fearsome keyword is very nice. It makes this card hard to block, and it really is a nice addition to the card. I also love the art as well, and you gotta understand that Imperial Demolitionist has a similar effect, right? And she does see play in aggressive decks, so I do think this card will see some play, but I don't think it's as good as some people may think it is. I don't know what the community reaction is to this card, but those are my initial thoughts. I could be far off, and this card could be amazing, right? Because direct damage to the nexus is always a very relevant thing. But I'm happy that they print this with in a form of skill, right? Like, in the sense that it can be interacted with, because direct damage should give the opponent the ability to disrupt it. The same reason as Doom Beast being a skill as well. The difference is Doom Beast skill, it doesn't interact with any unit, so it's much harder to eventually disrupt, right? But both give the opponent a window, which is really important when you're designing damage burn effects like this. And then we got the Twisted Tree Line, which is a 3-mana landmark that says, once I've seen 3 fearsome allies attack, destroy me to summon Vile Maw. Vile Maw is a I don't know how much mana it costs. Like, the card itself doesn't really matter. It's a 6/6 with Fearsome, in case you don't know. That's a big spider, right? The thing with this card is, I don't think this card makes sense in Spider aggro, for example, because even though that's the deck that has the most Fearsome in the meta right now, this is a 3-mana do nothing initially. And even in the best case scenario, which is you want to play this in the turn in which you don't have the attack token, first of all, and then the next turn, whether it's turn 4 or 5, depending on when you have the attack token, you attack with three fearsome units, which is easier than done. Some Stygian onlookers have to be in the mix there. You summon Vile Maw, you're not getting Vile Maw to attack that turn, that you already spent your attack, which means that in the best case scenario, playing this card on curve and triggering it as quickly as possible, you're still only going to be able to attack with the Vile Maw by turn 5 or 6, depending on the attack token. I don't think that's as great of a payoff as it would seem, and there's a lot that needs to happen. The problem is, if you draw this card later in the game, it's it's hard to trigger. I mean, it's not hard to trigger. It's slow, right? Because the turn you're attacking, you're generating it, which means you have to wait for the next turn to attack with it. And generally speaking, decks that have a lot of fearsome units are aggressive decks, and they want to end the game quickly. So this card can be incredibly clunky there. But I could see this card in a more mid-range, slower version of the aggressive deck that is trying to generate really strong value. The problem is, even in those decks, enabling this effect, attacking with 3 fearsome units really is easier said than done, man. It's a heavy requirement. So my first impression is this card will not be very good, but ultimately I could be wrong about it. But that's where I'll end it though, because it does seem very fun to play, and I will be messing around with it. But the first impression with this card is that it's not that great. So we'll have to wait and see. And I guess it may just end up being another Vile Maw card that doesn't see the light of day. But I really wish I'm wrong with this one. And that's where I'll leave it at. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking. 25 minutes. I mean, we had 11 cards to talk about. I had a lot to say. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did. Let me know what you think about these cards and which one you want me to build around first. I'm leaning heavily towards the Yeti because I'm just so excited for Yetis to actually be a thing. There have been some successful Yeti decks, but I feel like this is going to take them to the next level, and I'm just super excited. So yeah, I also want to build a field promotion. I want to make a Poro deck with Fabled Poro. I want to try out this Vile Maw card. Even though I don't think it'll be good, I definitely, I'm ready to be wrong about it. And yeah, I want to try Atakan as well. So that's it for me. What cards are you most excited for? If you say Defiant Dance, I will ban you from my channel. Just kidding. Not kidding. And that's all I got to say. Have a solid day. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for daily Legends of Runeterra content. Have a solid day. I'll see you tomorrow.